Hey, everybody. Ken Adams here with 100% Uptime, a podcast by P2P Labs. I'm joined here today with our CEO and co-founder, Dave George, and our
Hey,
special
Ken.
guest, Peter Radizeski with RAD-INFO.
Howdy.
So,
Well,
Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? Give us some of your background. What makes you unique?
So, okay. Well, I started as a telco agent in 99, sold a lot of wholesale to ISPs. And then by 2001, I was doing a lot of consulting, network design, strategy, sales, marketing. And then I helped a lot of the ISPs go to VoIP, helping to pick out switches, product, go to market, train their salespeople, started writing a lot of blogs, starting with Phone Plus and TMC. I've probably written we're over 7,000 blog posts, 7
Wow.
books, probably 1,000 articles in magazines.
yeah, that's something, Ken, that when I think of Peter, I don't always think about that, but you're not just an analyst and a consultant. You're actually an accomplished author,
I,
and not just
I,
with the blogs, but I think you should talk a little bit about that as well.
uh, the first book was more like I had spent so much time doing strategy for ISPs and talking about it at ISP cons and FISMA and stuff that it just kind of wrote itself. Just kind of put it all together and just to see if I could do it. Took 17 months to put that first book together. And Lulu was the publisher, and 300 pages being bound was a tough one. And then you don't realize
Lessons learned.
like the cover, I had to like hire somebody to do the cover because the binding and the measurement has to be perfect to do paperback or hardcover. But it was actually a couple of my clients that like stood on stage and said, "This is the book that got us where we wanted to go," and that's when the writing actually took off.
Was
So
that your
Nice.
was that your aha moment, Peter, where you realized that could be sort of potentially your future, being more of the person that helps course correct service providers?
that was the moment I realized that I actually had made like some kind of impact. Because you give advice, they don't always take it,
Sure.
or I was doing little things, in the beginning I was doing a lot of router configs for ISPs that needed ATM and frame, and that's like a one touch and you're done,
Mm-hmm.
and so you don't really see any impact. And then to have somebody talk about how I had impacted them and their strategy, that was like the moment, like, oh, this does work out well for the people that do hire me.
So it
Which,
was it was a feel good moment for you, but it also was grounded in actual results, outcomes for your customers.
yep, that's why I spend so much time talking about outcome in almost everything. It's like if you're gonna have a use case, talk about the outcome, not just like the pretty story and they bought 12 licenses. Talk about like what they got out of it. And the more when the thing about telco is, for the most part, it's replacement services for less money, right? That's the
Mhm.
CLEC
Right.
world. That was the LD world. That was the
That's the
DSL world.
Yeah, that's the transactional concept, right? You're basically just doing a transaction, um, versus like solution selling, right? Or really outcome selling is what you're talking about, which is don't sell them a product, sell them what's going to happen that benefits their business, is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, because the replacement stuff is always going to be less money on the race to zero. It's the way
Right.
broadband went. It's the way cell phones are going. It's the way SD-WAN has taken MPLS and like
Mhm.
wiped out billions of dollars of value for the large telcos. But we're out of replacement services at this point. Like if you want to sell AI or CX or cybersecurity, like this isn't plug and play replacement. Like, oh, you had a managed router or a managed firewall, here's XDR or here's UTM. Like you have to go in and like figure out what's wrong, what's the pain point, how do they need that layered? Who's going to do the layering? Who's going to be responsible for it? Do you have insurance? There's like for a lot of the solutions that are left for telco, it's a lot of moving parts, and for the most part, it requires multi-vendor solutions, and that's not something the telecom industry has typically been um, proficient at.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the CLEC, sector, if you will, competitive local exchange carrier for some of our audience who doesn't know. Um, that really was you were selling network connectivity, you were selling POTS replacement. You certainly were upselling potentially, in some cases from, say, a premise-based PBX to a cloud-based hosted PBX. I'm not saying there wasn't some incremental improvement in the technology or the tech stack, if you will, but I wouldn't call it necessarily transformative or so radically different. I mean, I was joking with Ken about POTS replacement and the fact that I still see so many advertisements for organizations that are signing up and or courting customers about POTS replacement even today in 2026.
I mean, there's 30 million copper lines that AT&T is going to be shutting off in the next 3 years. So yeah. Plus, like
Right.
when you think about like Granite, right? $1.5 billion, big CLEC, most of their revenue comes from commercial agreements with Verizon and AT&T. Just
Right.
resell,
Right.
which is our whole industry, is like resell arbitrage. How do we figure out how we're going to layer customer service on or single bill onto, typically what's been around, and that's easy to sell because it's transactional and it's give me your bill and I'll do better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
But
okay.
that's
Yeah. So with that being said, Peter, if a lot of our audience is small and medium service providers, agents, consultants, resellers, so they don't have the budgets to chase every big trend. They just don't have it in their coffers. So, how would you advise someone to tell the difference between, we'll call it real opportunity and an expensive distraction? You know, when you have all these things being thrown at them. I mean, you mentioned it, cybersecurity. That alone could take a smaller, medium-sized service provider years to extract, even with
Mhm.
some good vendors, right? You mentioned AI. I mean, that is such a generic term with so many different rabbit holes that you can go down. So again, how would you advise them on what to focus in on?
one. If you don't have some kind of affinity, passion, love, if you're bored by it, don't do it. It's not going to help you, right? Secondly, I understand that when you're on the wheel every day, running like crazy just to pay the bills as revenue on every renewal goes down, that you don't have time to stop. But I would say, first off, give yourself an hour a week just to learn something new,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? Another hour a week to play with something. Like for AI to be proficient, if you're not using it, you're never gonna, the concept doesn't work until you play with it and see it. So it's like make an appointment with yourself to do that for a couple hours a week and figure out what you like. You can dive into all these things with an easy webinar. Vendors have thousands of them. The TSDs have thousands of them. You could jump on, spend the 30 minutes, or get the recorded one where you can like zoom through. And if you realize you're bored, probably that's not going to be where you want to spend your time. Because if you're bored, you're you're not going to have any enthusiasm for the customer, and you need enthusiasm for the customer for them to buy from you.
100%. Yeah.
So, um, I think that's excellent advice. You have to you want to. I think most people want to enjoy their work. So what you're saying is you have to enjoy whatever it is you're going to be offering, or it's just
Sure.
not going to shine through. If your passion isn't there, they're not going to buy from you. So no question. But you mentioned TSDs, you mentioned vendors. I'm curious. I talk to a lot of small and medium-sized service providers on a weekly basis, Peter, as you may know, and a lot of them feel like the vendors hold all the cards, right? They feel like vendors, of course, they control pricing, they control road mapping, even messaging sometimes is controlled by the vendors. And so they feel like they're kind of caught. And so, as someone who advises service providers, what should a service provider feel is realistically what they're going to get from a vendor, and where do they need to stop relying on that vendor? Does that make sense?
Sure, because this industry is uh, you have a vendor who's your biggest competitor in like every segment, right?
Oh yes.
AT&T is your vendor and your competitor, and
Uh-huh.
they want to squash you. Or in cybersecurity, let's I don't let me think of one. I don't know. Let's say Threat Locker, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they have direct sales team that you're going to be up against.
Correct.
Maybe you're white labeling it, and then you're up against them, but you can only use their name and logo the way they tell you to, so you kind of get boxed in. That's that's our industry at every facet. If you're selling NetSapiens, you're stuck with whatever they decide to give you for a bug fix or a new feature or whatever. And
Right.
not going to pick on them, but probably anemic. But so how do you do it? I mean, a lot of it is you layer on your proficiency to help your customers. And that proficiency, for the most part, is usually white glove customer service, easier bill, stuff like that. That's like step one. Step
Right.
two is, I think we're going to see more and more of this over the next 2 years. Step two, whether you're an MSP, a CSP, an ISP, or an agent, it's going to be helping people map their technology stack plan. Like if you can't like help them map out what they're going to need to do over the next 6 to 18 months, then you're going to be stuck on the wheel just selling broadband and pipes and POTS replacement forever,
Sure.
which is fine. Maybe, I mean, that's
Mhm.
great, but the next evolution for our space is going to be who can come in and let's go back to like the small um, provider, right? They usually sell to small businesses, and that's usually a 1 or 2 person IT team who has to handle everything from cell phones to cybersecurity to the website, password changes all day long. I mean, they're
Mhm.
mired down in
Mhm.
Yes.
busy work. It you could help them like take a step out, see where they're spending all their time. Maybe AI, I'm not saying this is just an AI thing, but I mean, AI can take care of some of that stuff easily. They can outsource some of the boring tasks so they get to work on projects instead and they don't
Mhm.
burn out on their job. But all of that is somebody has to come in and help them step back, see it all, map it all out, and give them options. That is going to be the provider of choice over the next 2 years.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
so, so, uh, if so let me go back to your step one. I mean, unfortunately, I agree with you, but I also disagree, and so let me put a little push back on you a little bit.
Sure.
I think a lot of service providers will say things like they're 100% customer focused. We're white glove as compared to everyone else that says they're white glove. So I'm almost wondering if that's almost a trite overused statement, right? I mean, almost all of our customers that Ken and I service, they all tell their customers that they are white glove, they're
Yep.
customer centric, they're full
They're
service.
5 9s.
You know, well, I'm not even talking about from a
I
reliability.
know.
I'm just talking about even the hands-on approach, which makes them better than a
Absolutely.
national provider. Um, I guess what I would ask you is, if you look at some of the winners, if you will, companies that are actually consistently growing versus just treading water, would you say there's something more to it than that? I mean, I know you said, okay, they've got to focus in on advising the customer um, of what they need to do in the next 6 to 18 months in order to secure. I would think if you're talking about cybersecurity, they have to secure their tech stack. They have to um, provide the compliance and the guidance on the fact that many businesses are even smaller ones are starting to enact some form of AI. So there's compliance, there's regulatory, but when I think of a service provider, even a CSP that's a CPaaS user, a platform user of UCAS, for example, they're still trying to figure out 10DLC. They're trying to figure out registry. They're trying to figure out carrier issues. They're just trying to retain their existing customers so they don't have churn, right? Like
Yep.
they're holding on. So what would you be? So I'm trying to dig a little deeper here with the advice, which would be, let's say they are excited, right? And they are interested in adaptation and evolution of their business. What do you think they should do? And what have you seen a couple companies do that are more successful? You see them growing way beyond the current standard, industry, metrics that we typically see. What from a barometer, what are they doing better? What are they doing differently?
Okay, so typically they have an executive, whether it's the CEO, the CTO, or the COO, who spends time thinking about the business.
Mm-hmm.
Not just putting out fires all day long, but they think about and strategize where they're going to go.
Yep.
Not to blow my horn, a lot of them also bring in a consultant who can give them a view of operationally where they might be stuck. Because when you're putting out fires all day, most of the fires are your own fault. You don't have written policies, you don't have a process in place, there's no workflows, and that also means like AI isn't going to help you, right? So
Right.
Not even close.
you're stuck in a fire and you have no way out. So like if all you're doing is firefighting all day, and trust me, I've had a lot of clients that is their day, every day, just firefighting. You have to step back. Somebody has to step back and like look at all that and figure out how to get a little more operationally sound so that it's not firefighting all day long. Because if you're firefighting all day long, you can't grow. You literally are just chasing churn and hoping your growth can outrun churn. And I just came from a conference where at the CCA, and a lot of the providers, that's their big complaint, is their growth is just keeping up with churn. Well, that's a lousy day-to-day way to live, right? Like, so,
Sure is.
I mean,
Well, it takes the wind out of your sails. Let's just be
it does.
honest. We
Right,
are human.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's go the other way then, Peter. Not every battle is worth fighting for a small service provider. Would you agree with that? I mean, Sun Tzu, is famous for stating this concept, right? So, you know, do you always want to take on a hyperscaler or a national provider just because you might be able to? Like, is that a fight worth fighting? And if so, how do you lean into those certain strengths you might have, or where is the riches in the gaps or in the niche?
So I've had clients that have leaned into very large opportunities like that, and I've had clients that have not. And truthfully, both are happy with their decisions, truthfully, because we were just talking about this in December. One had an opportunity to do a large project with a hyperscaler and decided it would be too much of a change of focus for too much of their organization, and they weren't going to meet their regular goals. Would have been good money, but it would have taken them away from what their strategy and their plan was for the year. The other leaned into it and ended up eventually selling to actually one of the large guys. So his plan worked out very well for him.
Right.
But it's, the problem is most of them don't plan either, right? Like there's no goal setting, there's no planning stage, there's no anything. So they don't really have like a direction for the whole year. And that also hurts them because like, let's say you have 10 people. That's still 10 people that still need to know that they're all driving the bus in the same direction.
Well, okay. So let's go down that scenario. You're advising, say a 10 person service provider, and starting today, how would you tell them to build or adapt their business and their go-to-market strategies around those changes that you're seeing in the industry? Like, what would you say to them?
I would say it's time that you talk to your clients and you do a brand exercise. So when I do a brand exercise, it's 360. Talk to 3 partners, talk to 5 clients, talk to all your employees. Ask 5 questions. What do you think we're good at? Who do you think our biggest competitor is? What do we suck at? What do we need to improve? Get those 4 questions answered by 25 people, come back, you're gonna have a 360 view. Now you can figure out like what's real and what's just like, oh, we thought it was this, but it's hardly that at all. Then you could start like putting a plan in place. If you don't know what you're good at, what you suck at, and who your competitors are, it's kind of tough to like say, I'm going to go do this because it's going to be great. And if you don't talk to your customers, you have no idea what they're going to buy from you anyway.
Right.
Like,
Oh, I see this every day. The shiny object syndrome. The me too. I got to have it. Well, how many people have asked you for it? Oh, so why do you got to have it? Yeah.
but it's twofold. Like,
Uh-huh.
will they buy it from you and
Mhm.
can you sell it? Like, those are the two things that people forget. Like, maybe you don't have a sales staff that can sell it.
Right.
You know, if they're used to doing POTS replacement, all of a sudden you're going to come in and like, we're now doing CX. Or if they've been doing, not PBX, what was the other one? The one that does call park and the door buzzer. What do you call those things?
I mean, like door access control?
Yeah, it's not a PBX. It's the smaller version
Key
of it.
system. Key
That's
system.
it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
If they're
yeah.
doing
Key
key
system.
system replacement, right? If that's their whole deal, that
Sure.
is, it's even hard for them to go and do cloud comm sales because all they're doing
Sure.
is like replacing call control. So you're not going to go to CX and AI agents after that because you don't have the sales staff for that. You know,
Right.
if you best way to look at it is Avaya and Mitel. Both went bankrupt. Why? Because they had salespeople that only knew how to sell boxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And granted, probably the comp plan only would allow them to continue to keep selling boxes. But when your whole when Cisco decided their strategy was going to be SaaS and more services, they started cutting people that couldn't do it. Like,
Right.
you're out, you're out, you're out.
Right.
We're just bringing in people that can do this until 55% is where they wanted to be. Only took them 5 years. You've got to
But
kind
if
of
you're
match
a,
all that up.
but if you're a small service provider, again, we'll go back to the 10 employee size company. They might be a trusted expert or a subject matter expert in one thing. So maybe it's PBX, like you just mentioned, or key systems. Maybe it's, cloud communications where they are pretty good at UCaaS, for example. But now we're asking them, or let's go this way, the industry and their clients may be asking them to venture into these arenas where, yes, I like your UCaaS, it's dependable, but I'm being required by new regulation or new compliance rules to now have that in place. Can these smaller organizations partner with the right vendors, Peter, so that they can, you use the word outsource, but I would argue strategically align with different vendors and partners? Can they make inroads into that? Can they start to add a cybersecurity offering if all they did for the last 10 years, for example, was UCaaS? Or, if it's an MSP, it took quite a few years for MSPs to embrace the idea of doing cloud communications, especially UCaaS, right? That wasn't something that was top on their list. It might have been on their website, but you could tell because it was number 7 below email that they didn't really want to do it. They just added it because some customers would ask them for it. What have you seen as a way to get them to be trained or, align their team behind a new vision, right? Because you're really saying to the owner of this small company, who's probably also the only sales guy for the company, or maybe he has one other, hey, you've got to transform. You've got to learn this whole new thing. And certainly it starts with an hour a week, an hour a day, whatever they can afford to do to learn this stuff. But do you think that maybe strategically aligning with the right vendors that can do at least some of the back office stuff, right? Some of the tech stack. I mean, do we really expect a small service provider to rebuild their entire tech stack to now encompass all these other types of technologies, including, neo cloud and AI and all these new buzzwords that we're hearing that just scare people, right? It's acronyms that just, they're impressive sounding until you dig into them and go, oh, okay, I know what that is now. But what do you think about that? Like, can you see some light at the end of the tunnel for service providers because of all these new technologies?
Well, I'll just buy a pro license to Claude and vibe code my way to the end of it.
There you go.
Well, even that's now closed. They even had to change that name to Co-work now, right? Nothing stays
Right.
consistent.
Right.
No, I mean, if you think about like no matter what service provider you are, whether you're a UCaaS provider or an MSP, you've had to align with vendors to
Mhm.
you know, if you're an MSP, your whole business relies on one vendor, whether it's
Sure.
Kaseya or Datto or Tigerpaw or whoever. So they're not foreign to leveraging a vendor. So it's pretty easy for them.
Right.
Um, and for an MSP, adding vendors is probably a lot easier than it would be for a UCaaS provider. At CCA, I actually talked to one that had added a cyber stack and they had to take it away because the buyer for CloudCom wasn't the buyer for cybersecurity, and they kept running into, you do what now? So,
Oh, okay.
so that was a mixed match. I'm not saying that it can't work. I'm just saying in this particular instance, we were talking that through, and it wasn't worth the squeeze that the lemon was causing.
Sure.
Got it. The
So
juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I say it all
Yeah.
the time, but I would actually, but lately I've been saying, what kind of juice are we going to get for the amount of squeeze? That's really what you want to say.
and the thing I'll say is like you have to talk to your clients, see what they're going to buy, what they want to buy from you, what their problems are that you can solve. Like the biggest problem is most of them don't ever want to talk to their clients because they're afraid it's going to be a discussion about what they're doing wrong or a billing problem or can I reduce. And if that's your worry, you already have a retention problem. So you need to be talking to your customers about what they will buy from you, and you need to listen. And then you can figure out like, oh, you three of you have this pain point. Well, let me find somebody that can like solve that pain point and I can bring it in. And after I get to like 10 or 20, I can like take it in-house or white label it or do something where it's mine and not just theirs.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the whole thing with MSPs getting into cloud comm, and like I remember when because I've been in VoIP since like 2003, deep. I've seen so many vendors come and go. And a lot of the MSPs were like, this is crap. Like this VoIP is messy. You gotta remember, like for VARs and MSPs, they get on tech data, they see where that hardware piece is, what warehouse it is, drop ship it, know exactly what day it's arriving, then they get to install it. Telco's not like that. We give you an FOC date, but really what that means is forget about it. I mean, maybe it's today, maybe it was yesterday. We don't know. We don't care. And that lack of control was why a lot of MSPs didn't want to get into VoIP early. Telco's different because of all the moving parts and the ILAC back office and all of that messy stuff that maybe Palantir is going to solve for Lumen in the next couple months. But most of the other stuff, most of the other vendors, if it's not telco, it looks more like it'll be easier to partner with. Like the agentic AI companies that I've talked to, it looks pretty straightforward, right? The portal's pretty straightforward. They can integrate a little bit. The product is kind of straightforward. The cybersecurity vendors, unless you go with one that like has 27 acronyms, for the most part, they have a good portal. They productize some of the stuff, and they know exactly what pain points they're solving for. So it kind of makes it a little easier for you than trying to eat the entire sandwich. So I think there are partners, and that's why peer groups are important too, right? Like having a peer group so you can like go to somebody and go, what are you doing for this? Like, are you seeing this? How do I solve for this? I mean, as consultants, we bear some of that brunt, right? Hopefully they come to us, ask us those questions, and we have those answers. But if they don't come to us, I really do hope they're in some kind of peer group where they could talk to somebody else that's feeling the same pain they are.
What?
Yeah,
They
the good
shouldn't
news.
trust chat?
Huh?
They shouldn't trust chat GPT?
Sure, why not?
No, there's definitely some silver lining there. I talk to a lot of service providers, and the good news is they are talking amongst themselves. They are talking to their peers. They are asking what their peers are doing, trying to understand, you know, how to level set, I think is the word I would use, Peter. I've actually told a few of them just to breathe a minute. Sometimes it's okay to come up for air and look around and go, which way do I want to go now, right? Because a lot of them really don't know the direction they want to go in, and I think that is where the fear or the doubt, or I'll just stick with the status quo because it's easy to sell status quo, right?
Yep.
I mean, you've been talking to it, on this entire call where we talked about POTS replacement. They're not selling it because it's exciting. They're selling it because it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the business owners I talk to, well, let me ask you the question then. If you were talking to a business owner or a CEO that's in the telecom space, what unpopular truth would you tell them that most advisors are afraid to say out loud? I always found you to be very forthright, get right to the point. So, don't sugarcoat it.
I usually don't.
Okay.
But the one truth that I've found, and it doesn't matter how big, you talk of Vonage, doesn't matter. Service providers in general don't know the market they're in. They navel gaze so often that they really don't know what they're up against. I had a CEO in Miami that wanted to hire me, but we got into a fight over a patent he wanted, and I go, "You're not gonna be able to patent that. RingCentral has that feature," and he's like, "No, they don't." And da 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 da, boom. See, right there, they've had that feature for 5 years. They don't even know what their competition has or does. So it's like, how do you maneuver? That's like being a blind pilot trying to get out of an inlet in your boat. Like,
Yeah.
So I would say take a look around at, again, if you go back to the exercise, who's my competitor? What do my customers say? And I know I keep coming back to that, but I mean, that's great amount of knowledge to help you like steer the ship. And without it,
Right.
you're just guessing.
Okay, but the captain is still in charge, right? So
Yep.
what question do you wish more CEOs would ask themselves then, but probably don't or rarely do?
What do I wish they'd ask themselves?
Yeah, I mean, think
I
about
wish
it.
I
Go
wish
ahead, please.
they'd look at their, all right, if we're still looking like the 10 person or even the 20 person,
Yes. Yeah.
I'd
Mhm.
say look at your employees and then look at your customer database. Let ChatGPT eat that, right? Find the three verticals and find skill sets that you have that your employees have. Try to match those up, and then you'll know where to go next, right? It's like almost everybody only has about three main verticals they sell to. Integrations into those verticals are gold that they haven't mined yet. The flip side of it is if you have a lot of people that have tech skills that are very singular, you're going to need talent that's going to help you get to the next level. So if you don't even know and I get you when it's 10, it's all your buddies and you don't want to, you might have to upskill somebody, right? You might have to like force them to go get training because, and I saw this with a lot of interconnects. They had that one skill set of I can handle a Mitel PBX,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't translate into like most of the other tech stacks that we deal with. But you have
But
to
then I
face
think,
that. Like, think about it. Like, if you've been with this guy 15 years and he's your buddy, and you want to go, let's take the Mitel VAR, right?
yeah.
We're going to add CX and agentic AI because that's where the
Mhm.
market's going, right? Everybody talks about it, so we're going to need to do that. Who
Yes.
do you? How are you going to get there? You're going to need a skill set. Somebody's going to have to upskill somebody.
Right.
So who's it going to be? Or are you going to hire that talent? And that's going to be expensive talent. Or do you partner with somebody that has that talent and then your margins are slim to none?
Smaller. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm asking you because, I don't have that answer. And that's why I was querying you. It's, um, it's not always a bad problem to have, because it does also it has the consequence of you looking at your own organization and reevaluating the value of your team and also looking at where you're trying to go. So you have to start putting those chess pieces on the board in such a way that it's going to get you there. And, you know, I think what you're saying, although nicely, is you may have to cut some staff, you may have to replace some staff, you're going to have to upskill some of your staff, you're going to have to use a third party to augment some of your staff. Because like you said, if you're going to hire, new technology experts, they come with a bigger price tag. And so when you're a small organization, a lot of MSPs do less than $3 million in revenue. I know you know this
Yep.
stat. So they're not going to have the ability to hire a bunch of 200-300 a year employees. That's not in the cards for them, right? I mean, MSPs are being squeezed by all the vendors, all their competition, right?
Yep.
And while you can certainly differentiate, like you just said, and you can certainly try to own a certain space, you and I have talked about in the past verticalization, companies like Weave in the UCaaS space, for example, and others. But even there, they get squeezed as well because the CRM vendor says, well, boy, I can add voice too, right? So no matter what you do, there's always going to be some competition, right? Is there anything else you think a CEO should be asking themselves, though, that they're probably not, especially these smaller companies, sub 20, even sub 30 employee. I mean, I don't think it changes much because it's typically still a founder of the company who is probably also the owner or CEO or whatnot.
I would say Tom Peters was right when he said management is by walking around. I've had 5 clients have hired me to walk around, and the amount of stuff you can pick up in 8 hours is amazing. And the other is having an open door policy, because usually when they hire me, I'm also like interviewing as many employees as I can get through the door at one time. They should try that. But be real about it. Like, if they're going to come to you and tell you what's wrong, just let them tell you what's wrong, even if it's their fault, and fix it. The amount of bottleneck you can get rid of, or in some cases find out that as the CEO you are the bottleneck, which we've seen a few times.
Sure.
And you can't grow if you're the bottleneck. If every decision stops on your desk, that's a rough day for everybody, right? And
Right.
these are the things you learn when you look inside the business, not at the problems, but working on it. And their whole, the E-Myth is all about how do you put processes in place and work on the business, not just in the business. These are cliches for a reason, because they work.
Right.
Which is why we've been repeating them for 30 years.
Exactly.
But and I also understand that it is really hard to do. I'm a 2-person shop. To set time aside to plan for 2026 is a conscious appointment that I have to keep. Not just make it, but I have to keep it, and then spend the time mapping out how do I hope this year goes? What are my 3 goals? What 3 clients do I want to get? Stuff like that. Simple stuff. I'm not asking you to do a 120-page, business plan. I'm just asking you to
What?
think
You don't
things
want
through.
a vision board?
What's wrong with a vision board?
Nothing. I have a blank one right here.
There you go.
I always tell our service provider customers and friends of mine that have, that are SPs, it's okay to start. It's okay to be small about it, but start now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that activity starts with you, thinking about your business, thinking about what you want to do. Take some time to do some research. You can ask Ken. I just spent probably 2 weeks of just solid research on, from different data points, right? So from Cavell, from, Microsoft, et cetera, the whole gamut, just trying to get a better sense or lay of the land. What's 2026 going to look like? What kind of investments? Is credit going to be as difficult as it was in 2025, or is credit going to loosen up a little bit? How many M&As are they expecting versus last year? Is it going to get more and more confusing? Do I really care if a cable company merges with another cable co or not? What does that mean for me? You know what I mean? Because sometimes our service providers, we give them this information, and I don't want to say that they're in a small bubble, but in a sense, when you're in 10 employee shop and Comcast decides to acquire XYZ, for example, does that really move the needle for them that much? It might, but probably not, right? like you don't want to get lost in that that quagmire. But there are things that you want to know about, because there are currents, there are eddies, there are things that are getting, getting attention. And you're right, since most of our customers and a lot of our audience do sell to, SMBs under 500 seats and many under sub 20 seats. What does that mean when we're talking AI, when we're talking about CX, right? How do I make a product better when the data's not there? These small business owners, they're in the same exact problem that the small service provider's in. They don't have data. They don't know. They don't have all the processes and policies in place. You know, it 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 requires someone like yourself, right? And I'm not trying to turn this into a commercial, but it does require some expertise, someone who is maybe a third party who doesn't have that emotional attachment to your business, who can come in and take a look and start to say, hey, these are areas that you should look at. Most small businesses have a CPA, but that CPA is thinking about filing taxes.
Right.
If they're doing telco, they're worried about their 499s. They're not worried about helping them drive their business with the next greatest technology, or even just helping their SMB customers so that they stay relevant. I think that's something that I think a third party has, they might want to hire a third party to come in and do.
It's tough to see that far out. And,
It is.
when I do the state of the ISP, and I was putting that together for a talk I got to do. Yeah. Do the big mergers matter? Only in a larger sense of know that M&A is still happening.
Right.
And in the case of like Frontier, Verizon, and AT&T Lumen, that there's no antitrust. So if you think you're going to get help from the FCC when these guys step on your ass, you're not. You're just not going to get any help. There's no antitrust. There's no consumer protection. So that's not going to happen. The other is, like, one of the trends I picked up on was that a lot of them are doing asset-based financing, because getting an investor is harder and harder, and there's bankers popping up in the $10 to $40 million range that are doing a lot of asset-based securities, which is basically a loan against your receivables.
Right.
And a lot of my clients, for them, that's huge to know that, right? When you're putting fiber in the ground, it's capital intensive, and you'd like to know how are you going to get money for that, because you're burning up about $3,500 for every home passed. So a lot of those trends may not matter, like, to the micro, but on the macro, those trends are like, they do trickle down.
Let me ask another question. And maybe this is my final question, and then maybe Ken has something he wants to ask. But what is the one thing in our ecosystem that we're not talking about, but perhaps we should be collectively talking about? Is there a topic that you just see us not talking about, and it comes up in the back of your mind, but it's maybe something that just hasn't come to the forefront yet?
Yeah, as a industry, we tend to race to zero and devalue most of what we do. And we forget that, for the most part, telco is just above a root canal for the buyer. And they don't want to change. They just want it to work.
Mm-hmm.
And our job, for the most part, whether you're a CSP, an ISP, an MSP, is to make the magic of technology work for the small business without getting in their way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, then price doesn't really become an object, because you've given them an excellent outcome, which gives us full circle back to how we started this. But they all were like, I was at CCA, and they're all worried about, like, oh, the price per seat is dropping, and what about this AI? How are we going to make money on the AI? And da-da-da. I'm like, first of all, if you're paying attention to what Accenture and Deloitte and all those are doing, they're all getting crushed by AI, and they're going to have to stop billing by the hour and going to outcome-based billing, which they're not really used to.
Yep.
And when you see that shift happening way up there, it'll trickle down to us in a few years. But MSP should take heart in that because you're going to be able to get what you're worth. Like a small business can't run without the internet and their computers, whether that computer is just the Stripe cash register or it's, laptops or a server or a printer. I mean, like technology touches every business in every possible way.
Yeah.
They can't even run without it anymore because you can't even take credit cards without some kind of device for that.
Right.
If you think about it, like the example I like to give is credit unions are a lot smaller than Bank of America, but they can buy all the technology that Bank of America uses.
Right.
And act just like Bank of America. And the CSP can deliver all of that seamlessly. And they can charge what they think it's worth, not so much like, I need to get down to $10 a seat. Like, no, like if you can put the IVR in place and the chatbots in place and all the other stuff in place and make sure it's always running for them, you can get a fair market value for that.
Right. Sure you can.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they don't care about, I think, Ken, you mentioned 5 nines. Most customers have no idea what that means. They think it's another burger joint like the Five Brothers or who knows, right? They have no clue. What they're looking for is it has to work. That's it. They just want to come in, turn on their computer, and it works. They don't care how you make it work. You've heard me joke. I think both of you've heard me joke, coming from a telecom background. If carrier pigeons did it better and faster, we'd still be using carrier pigeons. They don't care.
It's true.
It's that simple. It's just true. I mean, 2 cans and a piece of string. If that was effective and someone could make it work better and faster and somehow attach an AI bot to that, we'd be using that today. I promise you. How do we as an industry address that topic? Because it always is race to the bottom. Cable cos had a faster speed than DSL against the telcos. They didn't have to discount their pricing. It was already faster and I would argue as good or better. So, and yet they still came out with bundles that underpriced and, they were buying market share, but they didn't need to buy it. It was already theirs for the taking.
So if you look at if you talk about regional providers, let's not talk about Comcast or Spectrum or AT&T, who have scale and have to have 22 million subscribers, otherwise their stock drops. The one thing that I've seen over the years is that regional providers can get more per seat for what they do than larger guys. The problem is they want to get $1 million for that price when they don't realize that, one, you can't scale to $1 million, and 2, having 200 customers that pay you very well with high margins means you're going to have 200 very happy customers that you can provide that service for because your margins are healthy. I'd rather have 200 happy customers than 300 and 100 of them are very unhappy.
Sure.
Because all of a sudden you're going to start eroding clients because your name is crap because you decided to go for scale instead of what you were good at. And the biggest problem that a lot of CEOs in our space have is they're constantly looking like they're going to be AT&T, and I have to keep reminding them that the largest CLEC to ever sell was CBeyond, and it was 55,000 customers. USLEC was 26,000 customers forever when it sold to Paytech. 55,000. That's large. Most of you only need to get to a couple thousand to be profitable. An ISP, a WISP with 2,000 accounts is highly profitable. A UCaaS provider that has 5,000 seats, the owner can go spend a lot of time at the beach.
Right.
They don't have to have 20,000 or 40,000. They just have to have 5,000. So it's look at it how do I get my next 100? How do I get my next 1,000? How do I make those people so delighted that they won't shop?
That's a great message. You can do this, and you don't have to have these ridiculous numbers that you hear when you're hearing, from when Ring Central says, we just closed another enterprise deal, or Cisco announces something that's got so many zeros that we can't comprehend those numbers. it makes it insurmountable. But it sounds to me like what you just said was, look, set realistic goals, apply energy and effort to those goals, align your team around those goals, and you can achieve them. Am I putting that into a nice wrapper for our audience?
Sure. I'll say something about those huge contracts. So they always give you the total contract value. They never actually get that money. They don't roll it out that fast. It takes maybe a year to roll those seats out. So they're not getting 3 years worth of MRC on all the seats they talk about. They reduce the price on those seats ridiculously. It's just PR. It's to keep the stock price up. It's not reality. Reality is I get a 200 seat deal. We're all excited. The bad side is your entire business is going to stop to roll out those 200 seats. You're not going to be able to do anything else except roll out that one customer. And you better do it well, or that'll be the last large customer you ever have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If the average small business is under 20 seats, I've been telling my customers to just get really good at provisioning 20 seat customers. If that's what you're doing by and large every day, then get really good at that. Make that experience so positive that those small businesses just keep talking about you. There's your testimonials. There's your organic growth. And then market to that as well.
Being efficient at execution is gold.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
Ken, any questions for Peter? I know I kind of stole the show here.
I think you kind of hit the gamut of all the questions. So, no, I think this was a really good session. I always enjoy talking with you, Peter. It's always great. And
absolutely.
Next time we'll have a couple of drinks in here. Some of the other stuff you like to say about people in the industry. And I'll see you. I'll see you, and then I'll see you next week.
Yeah, Monday.
Looking forward to your sessions as well. So
yeah, it's fun. You and I are doing a session together. Should be fun.
That's right,
Peter. Thank you, Peter, and to our audience as well. Thank you as well for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and catch us wherever you get your podcasts. Ken, take it away.
You got it. Once again, this is Ken and Dave with 100% Uptime by P2P Labs. And as Dave said, you'll find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else we can find a place to put this. So thanks again. We appreciate it.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.